In 2021, some people can make a journey to space, let the artificial intelligence drive or explore the metaverse. However, at the same time, some people are still struggling to survive. With no stable access to internet, education, or even just food and water. They live in mountain areas, desert, cliffs, or places you don't know. It's not a small number of people, it's 700 million. They might have been entangled in poverty for decades. But in February 2021, the Chinese government claimed that they had lifted 98.99 million people out of poverty. How's that possible? What has China done? But first, we need to know what is poverty. The easiest way to describe it is using money. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as living on less than $1.90 per person per day. Different countries, such as the US and China, would also set and update their own thresholds on a regular basis. People would normally regard the act of fighting poverty as simply giving money. However, not getting enough food, the lack of education, electricity, clean water, and places to live are all indicators of being poor. So institutions like OPHI uses the sum of weighted indicators to measure the degree of poverty. So poverty is a multidimensional problem. Before we try to tackle poverty, we also need to know what causes it. People often ascribe the causes of poverty to personal factors like intelligence, laziness, and so on. But many researches indicate that the emergence of poverty is very complex and systematic, and many people are actually forced to be poor. For example, if we mark all China's 832 national-level poor counties with red dots on the map, most of the poor areas are concentrated in China's central and western regions. And if we further analyze the geographical parameters like altitude and slope degree of impoverished and non-impoverished counties, we will have more interesting findings. In this chart, we can see as the altitude increases, only impoverished counties remain. The same is true for slope. Low temperature, low precipitation, and complex topography that follow hinders the development of local agriculture, which in turn makes the technology and industry upgrading impossible. This is Gansu, a long and narrow province located in China's northwestern region. If we color all counties in terms of poverty, we can find that most of the impoverished counties are located in mountainous and plateau sections in southeastern areas with infertile land, poor transportation, scarce water resources, and so on. People can only live on the ridge and are not able to develop agriculture or husbandry. By comparing the growth of GDP per capita in poor areas and the whole nation, we can tell that the growth of many areas has been stagnated for a long time and barely enjoyed the benefit of its nation's economic development. It means these areas may have caught in spatial poverty trap. This theory argues that the lack of geographic capital, including natural, physical, social capital, and so on, renders people in such rural area more likely to be entangled in continuous poverty. A research about 1,602 impoverished villages in Mountain Liapan, Gansu Province, argues that factors like climate, rainfall, the distance of the river, and the center of the county are all positively correlated or negatively correlated with poverty rate, contributing to the formation of spatial poverty trap. Besides poor geographic endowment, chaotic neighborhoods, conflicts, and inefficiency of the government will all cause large-scale poverty. It means there is no single or universal solution to this problem. Therefore, tackling poverty requires thorough investigation of each case and the implementation of customized solutions. Sounds rational, but how China exactly did it? If you Google China's poverty eradication among all results, you would find an interesting term. Click it. You could find descriptions like this. It's actually China's official anti-poverty approaches over the past few years. We know what poverty alleviation means, but what does targeted mean? Fortunately, in April, the Chinese government released a white book to explain and share their experience on fighting poverty. And one chapter specifically explains the meaning of targeted. Simply, it means accurately identifying the poor and taking targeted measures according to each person's situation instead of just giving money. But it's almost 100 million people. How do you know? The answer is surveying and assessing households by households by using super detailed questionnaires like this. The first two sections collect basic information like name, address, phone number, and so on. What's special here is the evaluation of work ability. Only those without work ability would receive monetary measures first. If you scroll down, you'll be shocked at how detailed and exhaustive it is. The causes of poverty is divided into 12 distinct categories, and according to the early stats, illness, lack of technology, and money are the major causes of China's rural poverty. And then it will thoroughly investigate one's land area. Type of lands, whether has access to clean water, electricity, sanitation, and so on. It will even measure the distance from one's living place to village's main road and the types of the road. It's not over yet. The next section is income. Besides personal ones, the investigation also includes the amount and proportion of state subsidies. For each specific question, there are other complementary documents explaining the details. Through this method, an abstract and multidimensional problem of poverty becomes concrete and digitalized, and problem of who and how becomes clear. Moreover, the information of identified people will be registered in a decision support system like this. It can visualize the distribution of the poor across the nation based on the big data collected. So the government can ensure to which areas should policies and money go. This is Guanshan village, which lies at an elevation of about 1,700 meters, with a population of 697 people. 69% of its arable lands is on a sloped terrains greater than 35 degrees. 434 people were identified as poor by the end of 2013, and 80% of them were left behind, elderlies and children with no actual work ability. Poverty caused by illness due to the coldness and dampness is very prevalent. It's difficult to cultivate crops like wheat and corns because of the poor weather conditions as well. Meanwhile, there is no major industry due to the poor development of infrastructure. Aiming at these problems, the government first covered all villages with the national health insurance. Meanwhile, by utilizing the advantages of high altitude and the large diurnal range, the government has invested $65,000 to organize and teach the locals to develop large-scale planting of wood year and husbandry as local major industry. For households with no labor force, they could transfer the land contracted management right to the local government. The latter would use it to cultivate forage grass and sell it, and the final income would return back to those households. In a word, the Chinese government has prepared a whole package of measures targeted at different causes of poverty. And in order to lift all these people out of poverty, more than 5 million people have been mobilized and organized from the government, state-owned enterprises, and so on. And investment and loans from all levels of governments have totaled nearly $261 billion and $1.6 trillion. Why China suddenly wanted to eradicate poverty in such a short period of time? The run chart made by the World Bank in terms of global poverty rate may provide some insights. Over the past 30 years among all regions, the poverty rate of East Asia and Pacific has plummeted from 60% to almost 0%. And among the three countries that have the most prominent performance, the poverty rate of China had plummeted from 66% in 1990 to 0.5% in 2016, involving 700 million people. So in fact, China has been dealing with poverty for many decades. But for this time, they've employed a more targeted and effective way to end it. However, fighting poverty is not just for one country or region. And it's definitely not a problem being encountered by only a few countries. Human beings have never had to face challenges so intensive and severe like we do today. In September 2015,
it is so decided.
All UN member states signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals addressing the most urgent challenges we face. Ending poverty is the primary challenge among all 17 goals. We may not be able to erase inequality, but we can try to guarantee everyone the right to subsistence and development.